I didn't realize at first, but I'm catching you out in London at the moment, right?
Yeah. So, well, I live like half an hour outside of London in a place that no one would have really heard of. So we always just say London.
Right.
Everybody knows London, but it's like a weird little town on the outskirts.
Well, and I mean, London is one of those cities. There's a few cities like this. I used to live in Chicago, and it was the same thing where Chicago's a big, sprawling city with tons of, surrounding like suburbs and exurbs and all that. And, you could live 45 minutes out of the city and people would still say, I'm from Chicago,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's just so much easier.
Yeah. But no, for some reason in my head, I had it that at a certain point, you guys had come to the US. Maybe that's just my US bias that I assume everyone eventually moves here.
Oh, to live?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I am such a home girl. I am terrified of living far away from my friends and family. Like the idea of it, honestly, really, really scares me. I don't know. Like a lot of people do always say that. They kind of say, "Why have you never left?" Like because I currently live in a village just outside of my hometown. So technically, I've left my hometown,
but just a little, yeah.
But yeah, just a little bit. But I just like what I know. And even when I'm traveling and like playing shows and stuff, I just can't wait to get home. So the idea of moving to another country really, really scares me.
That's interesting. So what's the furthest you've lived away from home? Like, have you ever lived?
Ever.
Ever? That's great.
I know, but I have so much respect for people. Like when I speak to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm moving to LA." I'm like, "What? What? You're just going to move to LA? Do you know anyone there?" Like, "Yeah, I know a few people." I'm like, "What about your family? What about your parents? Your parents going to be close by? Like, what about all your friends? I don't know how you're going to do it."
Yeah, well,
I just think it's really brave.
Yeah, it is brave. And I mean, I've never done that. I've lived all over the US, but I've never lived in a different.
But that's still brave.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, I guess to a certain extent, yeah. It is one of those things, though. I think I think staying home and like being close to home and being close to your roots is also pretty admirable.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. I mean, I take a lot of my own, I feel like you're probably the same way. Like, I feel like a lot of my identity, like really who I am at my core was formed from all those years at home. And I'm from Minneapolis originally. And so there's kind of this like Midwest vibe and culture, and like the people in the Midwest, you all kind of relate to each other. And yeah, I don't know. There's something, anytime I go back there, it's very comforting. So to me, staying home, like I get that too,
Well, Max, the other half of Koven. So for people listening who don't know, Koven is a duo. A lot of people get confused because I'm always the one people see. I play the shows, I do all the interviews. I'm the singer. We write the songs together. So I'm the DJ and the performer, but Max is the producer. So a lot of people kind of get confused. They're like, "Oh, you're a duo." So whenever I talk about Max, I always kind of try to introduce him beforehand.
Of course.
But he lives in London, but he's actually from a place called Cornwall, which is about 8 hours away from London. So he has done that big, scary move. But I guess for me, because the town that I'm from is half an hour from London anyway. Like most people in the UK, if they're going to make the big move, they go to London.
Right.
So if I'm already close to London, it's so expensive to live there. So I was just like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that makes me wonder, when you were growing up, were you like, say you're a teenager or something, were you getting into London a lot? Were you still getting like the benefits of the big city culture?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like most weekends going out in London, especially for like the nightlife, it's so easy for like the music scene to go out to raves and club events and festivals in London. It's actually quicker for me to get there than it is for some people who live like North London to get to South London.
Right.
Because they're having to get like a really long underground, whereas I can just get like a mainline train. It takes like 20 minutes to half an hour. So it's just never been a requirement for me to move. But it is funny because a lot of people are shocked. I don't know if it's something that kind of goes hand in hand with being a DJ as well. People just assume that you follow the music and you go somewhere that's going to like help your career. But I think if you're close to an airport, you can kind of go anywhere.
That's it. And you're right. I mean, it's funny because I've never lived in Los Angeles, and for doing what we do, especially if you're an American, there's always, you get the same question all the time. When are you moving to LA? et cetera, et cetera. And it is one of those weird, I mean, did you ever feel pressure from, externally of like those expectations of like, I should be doing this for my career? Because I've felt that sometimes, even though it's kind of a fake thing.
No, not really. I think the thing that I've always found pressure. So I'm from a town called Luton, and Luton has a really bad reputation as being like one of the worst towns to live in the UK, like, or towns or cities to live in the UK.
Really?
So I think I had a lot of like, I don't really know why. It's just always had like, it's been voted like worst town to live in like so many years in a row. I mean, it's not great, but I don't think it deserves a title. So my pressure is more that I'm embarrassed to tell people that I've never left Luton. They're
Right.
like, "What? You're from Luton? What? You still live there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really have anywhere else to go."
Wait, is
So
that
no,
spelled?
I've never given in to the pressure.
Is that spelled like Luetin?
Luton.
Okay, interesting.
Luton.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was probably saying it without pronouncing my T's.
Oh, no. I was just curious because Underworld has a song called Luton, but they spell Luetin, and I never knew what that meant. And I was wondering if it was the same thing, but
no,
probably not.
I still don't think you know what it means.
I still don't.
I don't think you cracked the code.
I probably never will. That's okay. Well, where to even start with this? I mean, because we're talking about where you grew up, I'm interested, I guess, when you were a young kid, maybe even before like teenage years, what was around you musically at the time? Like, were you musical as a kid? Was there music in the house? Any history like in your family of music stuff?
Yeah. Always been around music. My mum's a singer. She's always been a singer. She's always done like, I guess like cabaret stuff.
Okay.
Like she does like covers and tributes. So when I was growing up, she was doing like Cher tributes and
that's fun.
Shania Twain tributes. And then I started working with her and I was doing a Christina Aguilera tribute. And then we used to do an ABBA tribute together.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
It wasn't.
Oh, wait, did you get like conscripted into this?
Well, I was quite young. I was like 16, but it was really good money for a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So I mean, she paid me, obviously. But even before that, because she always sung, myself and my brother, we were always singing. My dad's very passionate about music. He doesn't make music or sing, but he's got a real passion. Like he's so invested in, especially like the Koven music. Like he's constantly asking to hear new demos and like messaging me like, "Have you got anything new to play me yet? I need my Koven fix."
He's your biggest fan.
Yeah, pretty much. So there's always been that passion growing up, and I know the same for Max. I know that he's always been around. Like his parents were very into like a lot of indie bands and stuff, and like his mum was very passionate about music. So I think we both kind of grew up in households where we knew it was something that we enjoyed and we wanted to like take further. But with me, I mean, I started writing songs when I was like 10. They're rubbish, but
you were 10,
Exactly, yeah.
That's interesting, though. I mean, do you remember, like, say you're writing a song and you're 10, 11 years old. Was it in your head at the time, was it just kind of a fun thing to do because that's what mom did and, it was just around you? Or were you like really taking it seriously from a young age?
I think that when I was that sort of age, I definitely wanted to be a pop star.
Yeah.
Like I definitely thought, I'm going to be a pop star. I'm going to be like Britney Spears. I'm going to be like Christina Aguilera. I'm going to do all of that. And then weirdly, I kind of got to this age at like 15, 16 where I was like, no, that's not realistic. I can't do that. That's not a real job. I need to get a real job.
Wow.
And that's just all a pipe dream. But then I started always like doing music on the side. So my brother was producing music. He used to produce breakbeat. And I started sort of like singing on some of his stuff just for fun. And then that was when I was like 18. So then I got back into the enjoyment of writing. At that point, I still thought this is never going to be a career. I'll just do it for fun. I was going to uni and like trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. I never ever thought I'd be a singing drum and bass DJ and vote. Like that wasn't what I envisioned, but it's so much better than what I envisioned because I think I would have hated to be a pop star. I think being famous would be awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is such a nice level of success where it's your job, it's your full-time job, but you are normal and you have a normal life.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect balance.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about this a lot on the podcast is, I think anyone getting into this, of course, you have the stars in your eyes and, you think, yeah, I'm going to be, or at least I want to be, it would be amazing if I could be, the biggest thing ever, the biggest star and on the top of every stage and every bill and all that. And, I think once you get into this a little more and you meet people who do live that life, or at least see what their life is like, man, that's a tough one. I don't know. It
is, yeah. Like, because even if I'm playing a festival where a lot of people know me at that festival because it's in a country, say like the Czech Republic, where we're really popular, and I'm walking around the festival and it's constant like, Kate, 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 and I love it. And I'll always stop and try and have photos with people. And I love that in that environment. But I think that if that was happening every day of your life, no matter where you were going, it would just be a bit much.
Oh, it would be crazy. Yeah. Think about, you can't go get groceries without, a whole production. I think about
and you see those
people.
videos of like celebrities when they're just trying to get out of a taxi to get into their hotel and there's people crowding around the doors. They're just trying to walk into the hotel. It just looks so suffocating.
I think so. And I think we've seen this over and over. You can tell like that starts affecting people mentally after a while, I think it really messes with people. It's not a healthy part of our culture, really, in any aspect.
No. Obsession with fame. It's a strange thing, isn't it?
It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. But then again, look at both of us talking about, it's like, this is what we do. We get up on a stage and say, hey, look at me, It's like,
I love that moment, though.
Oh, me too.
I love that 1 hour of being like, look at me.
Yeah. Oh,
give me all your attention.
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. So I don't know. I guess it's a balancing act. You can't go too far.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's a balancing act. Like this feels like the perfect amount of success, recognition, normality.
Yeah.
This for me is like everything. I never thought I'd get to this point. This just having music as my full-time career. I'm happy. I'm happy now.
What did you think you were gonna be doing before it became apparent that you could do this full time?
Oh, I don't know. I went through so many different things. Like I've had like 12 different jobs. Yeah. I think if I got to a point where I thought, okay, this isn't going to happen, and I kind of put music to the side, I probably would have wanted to do something with animals. So maybe I would have started like a dog grooming shop.
I like
or
that.
A dog grooming, not a shop, but like just built a little shed in my garden and done dog walking and dog grooming and like dog hotel, something like that. Because I don't think I could work in an office forever. I did that for a few years and I just couldn't do that forever. So I definitely would have tried to do something that was like working for myself. But if it wasn't music, then it would have been something with animals.
I don't know. Sometimes I think about, maybe this is getting a little too deep, but my connection with animals, it's been this way since I was a kid. It's like, I don't know. It's easier for me to relate to an animal than a person half the time.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to, and I'm just speaking about myself, but this kind of career doing music, there's a part of it that is also trying to connect with people and trying to figure out like the best way to do that. How I feel like I can express myself and understand people and be understood. A lot of it is through music. So I don't know. I feel like there's a connection there with the animal thing. It sounds like since you've been writing songs from a young age and your mom was a performer and all that, have you been a performer your whole life? Like getting on stage was always kind of the thing?
I don't know. It's weird because when I was young, I was quite shy. Quite nervous. And I think that I do actually owe quite a lot to doing the ABBA with my mum from a young age, because I definitely wasn't confident when I started doing that. But I think by the time I finished, I only did it with her for a couple of years, because then I turned like 18, 19 and was like, Mum, this is not what I want to spend my weekends doing. I want to go out with my friends. And she was fine about it. But I do think that sort of thing helped a lot because it's terrifying. Like 16-year-old girl dressed up as one of the girls from ABBA, like walking around a restaurant singing to people while they eat food. And like, it just was really intense. Like it was way more intense and way more difficult than getting on a stage now and playing to like 15,000 people.
Oh yeah. Cause that's one of those funny things too, where that's, you know, at the restaurant while people are eating, it's such a intimate, like awkward kind of performance, you know?
Yeah. And you have to really kind of just pretend that it's not awkward and just push yourself through it. And I think that's really helped me have like stage presence and confidence on stage. A lot of people say to me, I have really good stage presence. And I do think that a lot of it can be traced back to being forced to be on stage at the age of 16.
I love that. What a great image. Well, and so if you were, you know, at the time, like listening to pop music and maybe not loving the ABBA you were being forced to sing at a certain point, like what was pop music the first music you remember being really passionate about for yourself? Like, what do you remember the first music that like really just like set you on fire?
When I was very, very young, it was pop music. But I think in terms of thinking, oh, I'd love to do something with this as a more realistic kind of older thought was when I turned 18 and was old enough to go out to raves. Because I never went raving when I was underage because I looked my age. I was never, like, I could never get in anywhere underage. So when I was 18 and started going to like trance events and drum and bass, and that's when I started to kind of think, oh, I love this music. This is really cool. Like I could really see myself doing like a haunting kind of trance vocal, like a real euphoric kind of uplifting thing. So that was when I first kind of thought maybe I could do that side of music.
Right.
So I think I'd been through that period of thinking I want to be a pop star when I was like a little child, then going through a window of like, that's just silly, it's unrealistic, forget about that, get a real job. And then getting a real job, but then starting to go into raves and go, oh, maybe I could just sing on a track like this for fun because I love it and it sounds amazing. And I loved the kind of, I always loved the real haunting, like, I know I say the word a lot, but like the euphoric vocals. And I think that's where I always found that I could sit if I was going to do anything vocal wise.
It's fun. I actually have written down the word euphoric just while I was listening to your music before we got on here. So
thank you very much.
I think you're right on the money. Yeah.
We got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the dance music, the raves you were going to, what were those at the time? Like, are we talking about like big massives? Are we talking about going out to clubs? Like, who were you seeing? What was the vibe at the time?
The first one I went to when I was 18 was Tiesto at Brixton Academy in London.
Oh, that's a good one.
So that was quite a big one because Brixton Academy is like, I think 4,000 capacity.
Yeah.
Almost like a, what do you call those venues that have like a big stage and like a,
it's like a theater kind of thing.
Yeah, like a theater. Yeah. So it's a club, but it looks like a theater. Right. It's not like a kind of sweaty little club. It's a real magnificent venue. So when you go there for the first time and like for your first rave all in one, it's like, whoa, this is mad. Right. Like I remember kind of being really taken aback by all of it. And then after that, I definitely went to a few kind of like sweaty, grotty ones as well, which were fun, but totally different experience. But I remember Tiesto, Brixton Academy, when I was 18 years old, being my very, very first rave.
It's amazing. Tiesto is ageless, man. I feel like he's been so many people's first events for like the last 40 years. It's just crazy.
I know, right? And it just keeps going and going and going and going.
Yeah, he's a machine. It's unstoppable. And he looks the same too. I feel like he's like not human at a certain point.
Do you know that what I love about dance music is that it is quite unforgiving with age. Like there isn't a point where you have to go, oh, I'm too old to do this now, I'm going to stop, because I look out of place on stage, where you get that with commercial success, I think, with like pop stars and chart artists. they have like a bit more of a shelf life. They shouldn't, but they just do naturally. Whereas like with DJs, a lot of the time people don't even know what DJs look like.
That's true.
So they just keep going and going and going and going. And you've got people like, I don't know, Above and Beyond. I don't know how old those guys are, but they've been going forever. And nobody cares how old they are because they just love their music. And I think that's such an incredible thing about dance music.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it's going to be really interesting, like in the next couple decades, because I feel like in the last decade, with this like EDM explosion that's been, huge around the world, but, in the States, just crazy, where, DJs have become almost pop stars in a sense.
Yeah.
And like rock stars and all that. I wonder if any of that is going to change, because now everybody does know what the DJ looks like. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. With social media. Yeah.
Well,
and also,
that too.
I don't know if, for me, my worry is that it might be harder as a woman, because is it more based around appearance? I've always tried to make sure that Koven is never marketed to be about appearance, because it's not what I'm about anyway. I'm not really very good at like hair and makeup, and I just pick my own stupid clothes to wear on stage. So it's never really meant to be about the look.
Right.
So I would like to hope that we could have longevity as well for that reason, and that it's more about the music as opposed to the brand.
Well, I think it's important what you just said is, the intentions that you set with the project and sort of the agreements you make with the people who like your music, right? Because I think if you had started off being like, we're sexy as hell, and this is, this is what this is about, then maybe, you'd run into that danger a little more. But I think you like you said, because you've sort of set out, be like, no, it's not about this. Like, it's about all these other things. I would imagine the people who gravitate towards your music, that's maybe one of the reasons why they do,
Yeah, definitely.
But
so anyway, yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, I think that worry is totally understandable. And it's interesting for dance music, the origins of dance music being, an extremely inclusive kind of space for people who didn't have anywhere else to go, or maybe felt excluded from other spaces, to now it's become so big and so commercialized. I think, at least for a lot of people who got into it more recently, some of that got a little lost. And so I think we are kind of having to like reckon with all that again, as far as, I mean, I do think dance music at the moment, it's better than some, but there's plenty of sexism. There's plenty of racism, there's still issues in it that it's interesting to grapple with now that it's so big, because it's like, I don't know. I think it's easy to kind of just be like, it's big. There's big shows, money, everything's great. But I think you're right that like, we got to check in with that every once in a while.
Yeah. It is definitely becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. I agree with that. And like you said earlier, DJs are starting to become more like pop stars.
Right.
And that was never, I don't really think that was ever the intention. I don't think that was ever really what people wanted, but it's just kind of grown that way. But it would be nice to kind of bring it back to the more organic state of it being about the music.
Yeah. I mean, of course, amen. And, I think like online, you see people complaining about that with social media every day. And, it's a constant, it's another balancing act of like, how do I, thrive in this environment? Like, this is what the playing field looks like. And, rather than complaining about it, it's like, well, how do I just engage with it in a way that feels good to me, that still makes me feel like I'm, getting out what I want to get out and able to create what I want to create.
Yeah. And it's hard. I think a lot of what people are talking about at the moment is things like social media and having to post on social media and hoping you get enough interaction on your posts. And that's never really, it's so sad that it's about that. And I'm guilty of it as well. Like if I put something on Instagram and it doesn't get as many likes as something that I posted last week, I'm like, oh gosh, oh no, we're not relevant anymore. But it's so sad because it just shouldn't matter at all.
Yeah. Well, and I think to a certain extent, like it matters, but it also doesn't matter at the same time. You know what I mean? Because it's like all the numbers on social media, it's like they don't reflect reality. Like people use those numbers to make real choices and to like make evaluations of what they think of you. But in the real world, those numbers don't mean anything. You know, it's like, it's just an artificial thing that has no relation. I don't know.
Unless you can turn unless those numbers genuinely turn into people that will come and watch you at a show or listen to your music or buy a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't really mean anything. Because that's the tangible stuff, isn't it? People that will actually physically come and support you.
100%. And sometimes that is accurate. And, you know, the giant numbers mean giant numbers of people will come to see you. But I also know examples when it's completely the opposite. Yeah. And you can have somebody with millions of likes and, you know, they can't sell 10 tickets. It's Yeah. I don't know. I guess it's something everybody's got to figure out on their own and figure out.
It's a weird world.
It is a weird world. But I mean, it's also a world. One of the reasons of many reasons I was excited to talk to you is, I mean, it's a world you've been in for a long time. And I think you've seen sort of a few different waves in the music business and in the dance music world. Like, I mean, because when you started, and I know I'm sure, told the story of like how you and Max linked up and met and all that. But am I right that once you did, and once you were making music together and, you know, officially like releasing your first couple tunes, like the project started to take off somewhat quickly at the start, right?
So Max was Koven before me, and he was doing it by himself for maybe 2 years. And he had a couple of singers that he'd worked with. I think he always knew he wanted to be a duo and he wanted to work with a vocalist. And I don't know if that was because he didn't really like being in the forefront and having all the kind of gaze on him. But so when I started working with him, he was quite established already. And I was a massive fan. Like, I was just a huge Koven fan. So when I say they, I mean Max and our manager, James, who's been working with Max since then and with us since I joined. We've been working with him now for like 12 years.
Wow.
So when they asked me to join, like if I wanted to join Koven, I was over the moon because I was just a massive fan. I knew that Max was incredibly talented. Like, I could hear how special he was with his production.
So you were already aware of his music from a while back.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it was a really big opportunity for me. And it started off like, it was all right, but it felt like a slow burn because we would release music and it would do quite well on Spotify and we'd get quite good streams, but we just weren't getting any shows. And we didn't have, we were constantly kind of switching agents, or we'd change agents and then we'd be with an agent for like a year that wouldn't get us any gigs. And when you're constantly, it's tough, isn't it? And when you're in this industry, you're constantly feeling like you're against a clock of like how long you've got to make it before you run out of time. And a year is a really long time to feel like you've just done nothing. Yeah,
well, and especially if you've had, you know, songs that did well on a platform, right? Like you said, you had songs that streamed well and whatever, then that's, you know, after a while, you're like, oh, well, you know, if this song, like if it's now on the downslope and we haven't, you know, maximized what we can get with it, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, how do we follow it up? How do we keep this momentum going? And it's, I always try to figure out whether that pressure is something you put on yourself or whether that's something that, you know, externally we're just told that you're supposed to feel, you know?
I think it comes from constantly looking at what other people are doing and feeling like you want to be doing what they're doing, or you need to be doing what they're doing. Financial stresses as well, because a lot of the income comes from playing shows. But like the money from Spotify isn't that bad. Like a lot of people say it's terrible, but we've been quite fortunate in the last few years that it has actually eventually it's added up to be an okay amount that comes in. But nothing compared to shows like that. If you want to live on music, you need to be playing shows. So when we were releasing music and the agents were kind of saying, well, we don't really know where to put Koven on a lineup. We don't really get their sound, because we were constantly switching over different genres, which we still do now, but now it works. Yeah. We've persevered with it, and it somehow has benefited us, and now it works. But at the time, everything just kept falling flat in terms of like trying to get some momentum with booking live events and people coming to actually watch us. And like we were saying earlier, turning those followers into people that were actually buy a ticket to come see us. That was really hard for us. So we had, like, when I first joined Koven, we had an okay first year. Second year was a bit of a struggle. Then like third, fourth, fifth year, it was really, really tough. We felt like giving up a lot of on so many occasions. So me and Max have been working together now for 8 years. And I'd say it's only maybe the last 3 years where we actually got to a point where we went, oh, okay, this is a bit of a relief. This might actually work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, do you ascribe that to anything? Like, is that just perseverance, or did you guys change your approach at a certain point?
I think we did make a bit more of a conscious effort to make some music that would work in a club. So we still make music that we love. We're still trying to incorporate the sounds that we love and the vibe, and keeping the euphoric sounds and like the big dramatic build-ups, but making it just more club friendly. So we could be put on a lineup with other DJs and we would fit in. I think that's what we kind of went out to do, and then successfully did that. And then it just meant when we went to play shows, it made sense and people got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things too, it makes me think at least that, you know, if even your early records were having success on streaming, that to me, that would tell me like you were reaching listeners and you had fans. But then it's like, sometimes I don't think people understand that sort of fitting into the business side of it is sort of a whole different thing, you know, like
totally
you talking about agents being like, well, I don't know where to put this, like that kind of thing. It's one of those things where I think if you make the choice to be more diverse in your music, like you guys have, and to make a whole bunch of different things, to me, that's like, that's a great thing for the long term. But then in the short term, it's sort of, you have to stay true to the vision, because it's hard for, you know, no one else can see what's in your head, like your vision of your project, you know?
Well, I think we've kind of found a really good balance where if we made an EP, we might have 2 or 3 lead tracks that were big club bangers, and then 2 or 3 tracks that were more mellow or more, I don't know, different tempos, and just still stuff that, because we never wanted to just be one genre. We love both myself and Max love different, like writing to all different kind of tempos, and like we never wanted to be in a box of like, this is what we make and that's it. And we've always loved what we make. We don't release anything that we don't love. So it was never a case of saying, oh, let's just make whatever just so we get booked, because we always knew that we were always passionate about what we were releasing, but it was just having a little bit more of a strategic release plan, I guess, to try and get more shows.
It makes sense. And it's these are the things you have to hold in your mind, right? Like I talk about this idea all the time, is that in order to do what you do, it's like you have to be that sort of that pure creative artist just flowing in the wind, and then at the same time you have to be that pure business, like analytical mind. Totally. And that is the thing, I think you don't really realize when you're going into it. You just think, oh, I'll make this and put it on Spotify and I'll get loads of streams and then everyone will come to our shows. But even if you've got, I don't know, 10,000 fans, the likelihood of them all being in the same place that you can fill a 500 capacity venue it's so tough. So we get so many messages from people say like, oh, come to Chicago. We're like, yeah, we will, but we just need to make sure we actually have enough fans in Chicago. Like, thank you for loving our music from Chicago, but we can't go to Chicago until enough people will turn up. Yeah.
for when we go to Chicago.
Exactly. Well, and then it's funny on the flip side of that, where the people end up collecting. Like you said, you're big in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Do you know why? Like, how did that happen?
It was really mind blowing. So me and Max used to play shows together. So for the first sort of couple of years, we were playing shows together. But then his travel anxiety got so bad that it wasn't healthy for him to play shows anymore. So I started playing them by myself, which is when I started doing the whole kind of singing, DJing thing, which is something that benefited us as well without us realizing it. That was just something we just had to do because we were like, oh, what do we do? Like, we don't want to stop, but Max can't keep playing shows because it's not good for his health. Okay, Katie will just do it by herself. And then that ended up being quite a positive thing that came out of something that was originally negative.
Just because you enjoyed that aspect, like, how did it work out well, I guess is the question.
Because people responded to it because they went, oh, she's doing everything.
Right.
So it just stuck out a bit more, I think. Whereas when it was like Max was a DJ and I was a singer who would like go out the front and sing a song, go back and I'd maybe do 1 or 2 mixes, but the dynamic maybe just wasn't the greatest for stage.
Sure.
So I started playing shows by myself and we got booked for a festival in the Czech Republic called Beats for Love. And it was a last minute booking because somebody had pulled out. And we managed to get booked on the main stage. And the main stage at this festival is huge, like one of the biggest stages we've ever played. I say we, but because I always refer to, when I'm talking about Koven and stuff, I say we, but I was the only one who was going. So I went to play this show in the Czech Republic and it was something just mad happened at that show. And I don't even know what it was. But when I came off stage, it was the biggest increase of like followers and listeners from one place we've ever had. Wow. I remember our Instagram following went up by like 2,000, which is crazy to come off like stage from one show and have like 2,000 new followers on one platform. And then straight away, like the Czech Republic became our biggest % of followers on Instagram. Within a few days, they became like our biggest listeners on Spotify. And then it was just like this snowball effect because, like you said, we had a big support in one place that meant we could go back there and know that it was just gonna work.
Yeah. That's so cool. And then it's just stayed like that. Like, is it still a big?
It just got bigger and better because then we just kept going back and then we'd get booked for like other festivals over there and other stages and reach new audiences. And we started doing, so I think the Czech Republic was the first place that we ever like sold out a headline show. And I think it was like a capacity of like a 400 capacity club.
Oh, that's
But
fun.
we'd never ever done a headline show before. So I was really nervous. And that feeling of selling out a headline show is insane because when you're in a place and you know every single person there has bought a ticket because they want to see you, that's such a weird feeling.
Man. Yeah. And it's really cool too that first big festival, it sounds like it was at least one of the first shows that you were doing solo too, right? So to get that,
it was quite near
that validation, it's almost like double validation, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, no, it was a kind of realization that what we'd done was a good decision and it was positive for everybody. Max said the same thing. Max was really, really pleased with how it all went because he had an element of guilt. Like he felt guilty for leaving me to do everything by myself because even though playing the shows by myself is fine, it's a bit rubbish traveling by yourself. I miss traveling with Max. So we always used to have a laugh. And I think there was an element of guilt with Max. So when it ended up going so well, it meant that he didn't have to feel bad about it. And I didn't have to feel, I don't know, like an imposter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, I don't want to speak for him when he's not here, but do you know the anxiety thing? Is that just like a flying thing? Because I know a bunch of people who have that.
It's not so much flying. It's a strange one because he doesn't particularly have like a fear of flying. Like he's not worried that the plane's going to crash. It's more about being confined.
Oh, interesting.
So it's travel anxiety. So sometimes it can happen on a train or in a car. It's the idea of being trapped in one place for a long period of time and not being able to get out and I guess get maybe like a breath of air.
Yeah.
I think that's
like a
what
claustrophobia
it is. So,
kind of thing almost. Yeah.
So when we used to travel together, we had to be the last ones on the plane. So we would be right at the gate and it'd be like last call, and then we'd go on because he needed to kind of get on and get in his seat and not have time to try and get off the plane.
Yep.
And then as soon as we take off and we were in the air, he'd calm down and he felt a lot better. But it's the initial, I don't know if it's maybe because, when you first get on a plane, it's so hot and stuffy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can be quite suffocating anyway. And if you're thinking about that and worrying about that, and if you have anxiety anyway, those sort of, it's like the triggers, isn't it? When people talk about anxiety, you have like things that trigger you.
Yep.
And I think that's what it was. So there was always this concern that he just wouldn't be able to get on the plane. And there was one occasion where he just couldn't get on the plane. I had to go by myself. And that was really stressful for me because turning up to play by myself when I wasn't prepared to be playing by myself was very difficult. When we went forward and knew that I was going to be playing by myself and I'd prepared and rehearsed and knew what I was doing, then that was a lot less stressful for me.
Well, yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, we spent a bunch of time talking about, the origins of you as a singer and a songwriter. How about you as a DJ? When did you first learn to DJ?
Well, I started learning to DJ before I joined Koven. So I did have some experience being a DJ. But then when I started working with Max, I kind of let him take the lead on it because he was playing shows anyway as Koven and he was a DJ. And I would do like 1 or 2 mixes, but it would never be anything too fancy. And I was mostly focused on singing and kind of crowd hype and picking up the mic and going around the front to sing. So when it went to me doing the shows by myself, I did have to put a lot more time into becoming a better DJ because I wasn't good enough. And also DJing while singing. So I'd teach myself little points where, like, basically every time I'm singing in a set, I know exactly when I need to go and press play on the next track. Like I've rehearsed that section in the mirror 15 times over and over and over again. And sing. And then right now I need to get back, get the next track queued up and play the next track at this exact point. So there's a lot of prep that goes into it.
Yeah.
So I did just invest a lot of time into being a better DJ once I knew I was going to be doing it by myself.
Well, I can imagine. And not to mention, I mean, now with you DJing and singing, I mean, you're now doing more than the majority of DJs who are on those stages, And it's funny because we used to get so many comments of people saying, oh, she's not really DJing, she's a fake DJ. Oh, she hasn't messed up once. Oh, that's ridiculous. How could she sing and do that all at the same time? And I'm just like, oh, thank you very much for thinking that it's so flawless that you think it's fake. But all it is just rehearsed because I'm a performer. And I always kind of use the example, if you were going to watch, I don't know, Katy Perry do a concert, there's no way that she hasn't practiced singing every song over and over again. Like this, it's a performance, you rehearse it. It's not fake. It's not pre-mixed. It's nothing like that. I've just put a lot of hours into making sure I know what I'm doing. It's so funny to me. It's one of my favorite complaints when people get angry because something is too good.
Yeah, I know, right? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, they're like, it's just too good. It sounded too good. It's too great.
Yeah, it's too good. It can't be real. Like, you have to take it as a compliment. But also, I want to reply to people like that because there's something really infuriating about people saying it's not real.
Of course.
Like if somebody said, I don't like Koven's music, I don't like Katie's voice, that's different. Like that's an opinion. Fine, you can have that opinion. It's not a nice opinion, but fine. If that's what people think, it's not a problem. But if someone's like, you're fake, you're not really doing that, that's really annoying because you're like, oh, I've put a lot of effort into this and you're just wrong. That's not an opinion. It's just incorrect.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. You're just wrong. It's so true. And I, with those people too, I'm like, would you be happier if it sounded worse? Do you want it to sound worse?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then every now and again, though, when I do, it kind of helped because when I have messed up, I think to myself, well, at least people know it's real.
Yeah.
If I do every now and again mess up a mix.
Well, sure. And people like those real moments. I mean, so of course, like that's, those kind of things can make a performance feel unique and special and all of that. To go back to something we were saying before, and I'll say this, you don't have to say this, but I think also those kind of comments of like, oh, she's not really doing it herself. Like I don't think a man doing what you do would get that as much. And to me, that's another example of like some of the issues that are still in dance music. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, no, you definitely do get it more as a female. I do think it's getting better.
Yeah.
I do think that it's more, people are realizing now that women do mix live and they do make their own tunes and they can do all those things.
It's so silly.
But you do still get the idiot comments, definitely.
Yeah, of course. And is it different for you going to different places? Like, we were talking about the Czech Republic. I know that like right before the pandemic was when you were first starting to come to the States a bit. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
we went to the States in like 2018, and then I think our visa ran out. So I only then went back to the States again for the first time this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man. And I guess I'm only asking just to say, like, do you approach playing in different places differently, or do you see different, like, is your music received differently in different places?
I will definitely try to play a set that is slightly more catered to the territory I'm in. But that takes time to learn. So I wouldn't necessarily play the exact same set in the Czech Republic that I would play in Belgium, because Belgium, like a little bit more, I could be wrong here, but I gauge the feeling that Belgium would be happy with a little bit more dubstep.
Yeah, they go a little
whereas
harder.
In the Czech Republic, they're not really that keen on it. So I'll try to limit how much dubstep I'll put in a set if I'm playing there. And then when I go to America, again, probably more dubstep.
Yeah. They can't get enough.
Yeah. So I definitely try, but it is hard because you're kind of just picking it up from what you read from the crowd when you watch other people play, or when you play a show there and you go, oh, that wasn't great. I need to change that next time and change that. But definitely something you pick up on, that the different territories need a slightly different set.
Yeah. Well, and probably the fact that you do have a wide musical breadth in what you do helps in that regard. Like I was just listening to the Higher Ground EP that just came out before we hopped on this call. And even in that, and I've been a fan of what you guys do for a long time. And I thought I knew sort of the whole breadth of what you did. And then today I was listening to your whole catalog and the Higher Ground EP and all that. And, it goes a little deeper even than I had realized, as far as like how many different, not just sort of genres you touch on, but even just the energy of those songs, like there's some that are almost like ballads and some that are, crazy high energy. It's really interesting. I don't know. It is.
Yeah. We have been lucky to do that, because a lot of artists, they don't get away with it when they try to change sounds. They get the usual comments like, oh, what the old stuff.
Yeah, of course.
We've always been really lucky that we've released totally different sounding songs and we've never really had too much, or if any, backlash. The only thing is difficult is that sometimes I'll be at a show and someone will send me a message and be like, please play something tonight, like whatever track. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just never play that out. I just wouldn't.
Right.
And the only time I would play like the slower, less dancey tracks is at like a real Koven headline show. So we did our first London headline show at the end of last year. And it was an hour and 45 minute set. And I played loads of tracks from our album that we've never ever played out live before, because I knew the majority of people there have probably listened to the album from start to finish. So they would appreciate it.
Right.
But there's certain tracks that I would not dare play if I was like booked for like a drum and bass festival. I just wouldn't, because I think the crowd would look at me and go, what is going on? So I'm just very conscious of that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having some tracks on the album that people can just sit and listen to at home, and they may be fortunate enough to hear it out live if they come to one of our unique special headline shows where it's kind of all about our music. But they won't get it if they watch us at a festival. They're not going to hear that track.
Which, yeah, it makes sense. And it makes me wonder too, like, do you see yourselves as part of any one like scene or style in particular? Do you feel like, you know, if you think about like, who are my peers or like, who is my friend, like, what would that be? We're
definitely mostly connected to the drum and bass scene. Yeah. That is in this side of the world, especially in Europe, in the UK, most people know us for drum and bass, and most of the people we play shows alongside are other drum and bass artists. It's a lovely community as well. We get a lot of really lovely advice from other acts, other drum and bass acts, and get to meet the same people over and over again. And they do sort of start to become friends, which is really nice. I think in the US, people probably know us more for a lot of the other tracks, especially like the tracks that have been on Rocket League through Monster Cat. So a lot of people discover us through that. They might not even know drum and bass or know our drum and bass. So we do kind of have this weird like division of like people that follow us.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's why we try to cater to different audiences.
Yeah, which again, it makes total sense. I mean, it's funny, like in the US, in the dance community, there's all this talk. There's a lot of energy for drum and bass in the US at the moment, and a lot of hype around it. I'm sure you've seen some of this online, like just a lot of people excited about it. It's an interesting thing because it's in my mind, like drum and bass is it's like baked into UK culture, even for people who aren't like DJs, right? Like it's just on the radio sometimes, there's pop music incorporates it. And it's never, I don't know, it's never really had a crazy foothold here. Like it's always been bubbling. It was weird because
I played a festival in Montreal on Friday, and I didn't even think about the whole drum and bass America, drum and bass Canada thing. I just played what I wanted to play. I kind of forgot where I was. And I got so many messages from people afterwards saying, thank you so much for playing drum and bass, because you were the only drum and bass act at the festival for the whole day. And they were just so grateful to have like this 1 hour of like predominantly drum and bass. And I get that kind of worked in my favor because I forgot that it wasn't really a drum and bass place. But I thought like, oh, they're really into this. It's going really well. But I don't know if maybe it's just if there was other drum and bass acts, they wouldn't have liked it as much. And it was just good because they just had this one kind of hour of it.
Yeah.
So it was a nice switch up. But yeah, I was quite surprised the amount of messages I got from people saying they were really, really happy to have that 1 hour of D&B at this festival.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And I mean, I've always been a huge fan, so it's fun for me to see more people getting excited about it here. And it's an interesting thing. This just occurred to me. I feel like, the UK is always known for sort of being on the cutting edge as far as music culture goes, like for dance music. I always say, you can look to the UK from America to kind of see what's going to be big in America like 3 or 4 years down the line. But drum and bass seems like it's just always been there. Like, whereas I think other sounds in the UK kind of come and go and have these big upswings and downswings. Am I right in saying that? Does that sound accurate? Like it's just always been there. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, drum and bass has been huge here for a long time, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. Whereas we've had that with dubstep, where like dubstep had this big boom and then it kind of died off a little bit, and then it kind of came back a bit and died off a bit, and people aren't really sure. I think there's a lot of UK dubstep artists who have to go to America in order to kind of make a living now. Like there's not enough dubstep shows in the UK for them to have their careers here. They have to do tours in America. So it is strange, really, isn't it? Because it's like almost the opposites with US and UK. We've just always had a really, really strong drum and bass scene, and it does seem to just continue to be that way, which is great. And hopefully it continues because it's so high energy and it's so, I don't know, it seems like a really lovely genre that sounds really cheesy, but like brings people together. Like there's always such a good vibe.
Absolutely. Well,
I played Let It Roll Festival on Saturday in the Czech Republic, and I think it might be the biggest drum and bass festival in Europe.
Okay.
If not, it's definitely one of, like, because it's all drum and bass.
Right.
And it was just such a good vibe. Like, it was just so amazing. It felt like such an incredible thing to be a part of.
I think part of it maybe too is that, there's still like the culture of it still exists, right? And people still get excited about like the culture and where it comes from. Like, to me, it's such a UK thing that it never really got like corrupted, or it never really got like changed, from like the original spirit of it to a certain extent.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think has happened to a lot of other genres.
Yeah, I think in the UK, people are very proud of it, definitely.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think you're right. That's it. Like, people really take it as part of their identity. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like tied to where they're from. It's so cool, man. Because I don't know. I mean, in the States, obviously, like, we have house and techno that started here, but I don't feel like people necessarily feel connected to it in that same sort of rooted way,
Yeah. Maybe because that is just popular everywhere. Yeah. Whereas like
it got too
with
big.
drum and bass, it feels like other countries are kind of fighting to keep it alive. So here in the UK, we're like, no, we love it.
I think, you're right. Yeah. I think you're dead on. That's a really good insight. You got to protect that, I guess, man. Because it got too big here. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
One thing we didn't talk about that I wanted to just quickly mention was the albums that you've made. You mentioned them in passing. And the first one being Butterfly Effect, which came out in 2020. Is that right?
2020, yeah.
Yeah. So, from starting, like you said, you'd been together 8 years. Why 2020 for an album? Like, had you been thinking about an album for a long time? Or was this sort of part of the reinvention of it?
I can't really remember now. And I feel like my manager will listen back to this and be like, what do you mean you can't remember? We had such a big plan. It was in place for ages. I think that we just got to a point where we'd released so many singles and EPs and compilation. We released like a compilation album, but not like a proper debut album. And probably it would have been 6 years in of me and Max working together. And it made sense that it was the time to do it. And it was, because it worked so well. It really couldn't have been timed any better. So I'm sure someone had a good theory for why we did it. Probably, like I say, our manager.
Yeah.
And it worked. And I'm really happy with it. And Max's as well. And it was long, though. It's a hard process. It definitely got to a point where we felt like it was never going to be finished. And it will probably have to be a while before we try to do that again, because it was tough. But yeah, very, very proud of it.
Yeah, it's a great, great album. And I know everybody's sick of talking about the pandemic at this point, but it must have been odd to kind of have all that build up and release the debut album, and then the pandemic happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was terrifying and gutting, because we thought it was all going to go to waste, because we released it the day we released the album was the day like the lockdown was announced in this country.
Really, the same day? God damn.
Yeah, it couldn't have been more poorly timed. Well, as we thought, we thought it was poorly timed, but it turned out to be really good, because it was something that pushed us through this like horrible period of nothing else going on. We had this music that we could keep sort of keeping us present, I guess, keeping us active.
Yeah.
And also, we had lots of really lovely messages from people saying that the album had helped them a lot. And so then a lot of people were really connected with the album. And at a time when everybody else took their foot off the gas, like when I say everybody else, I mean like producers took their foot off the gas and stopped releasing music because they didn't see the point, we had a whole album to keep pushing. So it kind of worked out well. That's
actually a really like nice positive spin on all of this, because I think there's so many stories of of people feeling the opposite way. But I think, yeah, that's a really nice note. And it makes me think about, like, it is such a great album. And I think, people really connect to your music in a way that I think is unique from a lot of other people who do a similar thing. And I was trying to figure out like what that was. And I wanted to talk to you about your songwriting a little bit. And and it just if you know, like, do you know what you guys are doing differently? Like, is it something about your unique process of songwriting? Is it something in the dynamic between you and Max? Like, how does a song come into being for you guys?
A lot of the songs I'll sit and write by myself, like on the piano, terrible piano chords, send Max a demo, and then he'll somehow make it into something beautiful. Or he'll send me an instrumental and I'll write to it. Or we will sit together and write. It doesn't happen as much as I'd like, but we did actually go away to a writing retreat last year, which is where we wrote the whole, all the tracks from this current EP, from the Higher Ground EP. And that was really, really nice. But I think that maybe with our writing technique and a lot of the people connect with our writing a lot because it's quite genuine. Like, it is just, we don't work with writers. We don't work with top liners. Whereas a lot of, like, in drum and bass, it's kind of, you'll get like a group of people, like a room full of people trying to write like a hook.
Oh, absolutely.
For it to be catchy, which works as well. But this is, I guess, one of the few situations where if you're connected to a song and a singer and their lyrics, especially in drum and bass, that you're going to go and see the person that wrote that song singing that song that you feel connected with that they are connected with. So it kind of makes the whole thing slightly more authentic.
Yeah, it's more direct.
Because I know, sorry, what was that?
Oh, just it's more direct.
Yeah, definitely. With one of our really kind of popular tracks that's always one of my favorites to play live is All for Nothing.
Yeah.
And the lyrics on that are quite kind of sad, but actually also really positive. And I remember writing that song and I was really down at the time when I wrote it. And you can kind of hear it, that it's me trying to write like an optimistic song to make myself feel better in a time when I wasn't feeling good. And people have picked up on that and people have taken that exact same feeling from it without me ever having to explain what the track's about. They've got that. And it's so incredible to see people singing back lyrics that you've written, especially when they're really, really meaningful to you. And I think maybe that's why we've been very fortunate in that way of people really connecting with the music.
For you, I mean, like songwriting, ideas, lyrics, all of that, is it the kind of thing where you'll just have an idea, jot something down, come back to it? Or are you sitting down and sort of writing in like a focused,
it varies. Like sometimes I can sit and just write a whole song and it will all just come out in one, and I'll be like, "Whoa, I'm on a roll here. This is great." And then I'll message Max and be like, "Max, I've just written a banger." And then I'll do a quick demo, and he's like, "Yeah, this is great. How'd you do that?" I was like, "I don't know, it just came to me." Yeah. And then other times it will be, I'll write a bit and I'll be like, "Oh, this isn't working," and I'll change it and I'll send it to Max, and he'll be like, "Try changing this, try changing that." It kind of varies, but the songs that I really, really love tend to be the ones that have just flown, like as in flown out as I've been writing them. They've just gone pa 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 pa, like verse, chorus, like it's all making sense. It all just comes together really, really nicely.
Do you write in the middle of something happening, or do you usually, go through something and kind of reflect on it afterwards, if that makes sense?
It's weird, really, because I never really think that I'm writing about a specific thing. I never think, oh, something's just happened, I need to write a song about this. I'll just sit down and start writing, and an emotion might pop into my head, or I'll think about a situation that not necessarily I've been through, like something that one of my friends has been through or something. Or sometimes it could be something that I just feel like people can relate to that isn't necessarily something that I have experienced. But I don't really have like a process of when I write. I try to write every day.
Okay.
But some days I'll just sit down and I'm like, oh, there's nothing, this isn't working today. So it's never like I'm in a particular state of mind and I have to go and write a song. It will just be a case of, right, sitting down to do my writing today, because that's all I do is I just do the writing. Max has got to do all the production, which takes way longer. So when I'm not planning for a set or playing a show, the only thing I really have to do is write. So I'll try to do that every day, because otherwise I feel lazy if I'm not sitting down and doing a couple of hours each day at least. Technically, my work is on the weekends, but I still like to try and work in the week as well.
Yeah. I mean, you got to wear a lot of different hats. And I think what you're talking about too is kind of just showing up, right? Like if you just say, I'm just going to, every day I'm going to write, and maybe not all of it is going to be amazing, but if you're consistent, I just think that's a really good tip for anyone listening who's trying to think about how to do this for themselves. It's like, just do it every day. Like you don't, some days you'll feel inspired.
It's harder to do when you have a full-time job.
I mean, of
when
course.
I used to work, I did still try to do something in the evenings, if I could, just even a little bit, like an hour a day in the evenings. But you also have to have that balance of not letting your personal life suffer too much. But that's just a whole other balancing thing, trying to have a full-time job and be creative. But I do think, like you say, if you can do a little bit every day, it will help you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right too, that, not everyone has the opportunity to just sit down for hours and all of that. Were you still working a job when Koven was starting?
I only gave up my job last year.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Because I was terrified to give it up, because I was just so worried that everything was going to fall apart. And I was really lucky that I had a job that was quite flexible. And every time I got busier with Koven, I was able to like drop a day at work.
Right.
So it was a job that was 5 days a week. Then I reduced it to 4, then 3. And also they were really good with like, if I'd say, I need to go on tour in New Zealand for 4 weeks at the end of the year. And they'd go, okay. So I was really, really lucky to have that. But before that, I was just working like 5 days a week, 9 to 5, getting home, writing, weekends writing, practicing DJing, all of that. I mean, there were times, so I actually worked in a doctor's surgery for like the last 5 years. That was the job that I left when I quit my job last year. Best feeling in the world, by the way, quitting your job to do music full time. Oh, it was amazing.
Especially after all that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember like playing Rampage in 2019 and then having to go to work on the Monday morning. And because it was a doctor's surgery, like this kid had thrown up in the reception and there was no one else around. So I had to clean up this like random kid sick. And it was just such a contrast. I just thought like, how is it? I just played in front of 15,000 people 2 days ago. And now I'm cleaning up some kid sick. I don't even know this kid. This is weird.
And that's the balancing act again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you ever get anyone in the surgery who recognized you from music?
No, but the people that I worked with would start to, because I never used to talk about it. I used to hate talking about it. But once people would say like, oh, did you know Katie does music? And then they'd all Google it and they'd start looking at it. They'd be like, wow, you were at the show at the weekend. I'm like, yeah. I just hated it. I couldn't handle that. I wanted to be working in the doctor's surgery. That was Katie doing that. I didn't want it to be connected with the music at all. I hated that.
Of course.
But they were just being sweet. It was nice, really.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. Well, in all of this, like I hear you, just talking about, like working a full-time job 5 days a week, coming home at night to write, all of that. Like, what is the drive behind that? Like, have you just always been that way? A question I ask a lot on this show is like, what is the most fun part of what you do? What is the most exciting part? Like, what's the part that keeps you here?
Well, the drive beforehand, I guess, was the hope that one day I would be able to do it full time and I would be able to quit my job. And I hated working in the doctor's surgery. It was awful. And it felt like so many occasions we were so close, but we weren't just there. So I think every time you got a little bit closer, it would just encourage you to go, no, just keep going. But the overall drive of it, I think is just love it. I just love music. I love singing. I love writing. I love the response that I get from people. I love when people message us to tell us that our music has helped them and changed their lives and things like that. And it was weird because one of the reasons I didn't want to quit my job for so long was because I was worried that I would feel like I didn't have a purpose if I wasn't setting an alarm in the week and having something I had to get up and go to.
Interesting.
And I remember saying to my dad, like, oh, I'm just really scared to quit the job because that feels like that's my purpose, like I'm making a difference. And he was like, Katie, what are you talking about? You're making way more of a difference with your music than you are working in the reception of doctor's surgery, like for minimum wage. Like you're making a big difference. You and Max are making a big difference to people's lives. Like you just have to read the messages you get from people and see that response. Like that's the purpose right there.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the big things that drives me.
Well, yeah, I mean, to bring it back to the idea you just made me think of, like the idea of euphoria and that feeling that we've been talking about, I think that's a feeling that it's a feeling that requires other people participating, like it's like, I think hearing a piece of music and that euphoria, that's the give and take between the listener and the person who made it. And it kind of requires both sides of it, right? And I think for you to be able to give that feeling to people, of course, that's an amazing thing. But then also to receive that feeling, it's, I think you have to be doing what you're doing and kind of interacting with those people.
Well, I've been in the crowd so many times as well. And I've been that person who's had a rubbish week and just wants to go out on a Friday night and just listen to music and look at the lasers and like just hug their friends and really, really feel those moments. And I've had so many incredible nights in the crowd. And I just always kind of had this desire to be the one on the stage who helped to create those moments for other people.
Yeah. And it's a way to keep yourself kind of in the game too, right? Like, because by doing that, you sort of get the echoes of that feeling. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, because for me, still to this day, I mean, music is one of those things. It's like the only thing almost that can give me that feeling. And I think once we start doing it professionally, it's like now we know too much, so you have to work a little harder to get that feeling for yourself.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
And I mean, as we're kind of wrapping it up, like what does still give you that feeling? Is there music you hear? It could be new music, old music, anything. Like what gives you that feeling?
I really love music with like strings and orchestral elements, like dance music with orchestral elements. So drum and bass with orchestral elements is really something I love, which is why we were really lucky with one of our last singles, Take It Away. We got to record live strings for the first time, and that was amazing. But like an album that I've been listening to a lot recently that's just come out is the new Odessa album. Is that how you say Odessa?
Yeah. Odessa, yeah.
I've been listening to them for years, but I've just never been sure how to say the name. But the last track on their most recent album, I think it's called Light of Day, is the last track on their album. It's like 6 minutes long. And it's just one of those tracks where I would just put my headphones on, close my eyes, and just think about all the things that I'm grateful for and all the positive things in my life. Like I love music that makes you feel really like pensive and like really like nostalgic and deep and thought. And you just like really kind of almost start overthinking about life, but like in a really positive way. Like just thinking about all the like beautiful moments coming together and like, God, this sounds really dramatic.
No, I love this. No, I love this because it's really interesting because I'm relating to what you're saying. And I think, some of the best music, the most meaningful music, it's funny because it's almost like a meditation when you hear it. Yeah. Like it's not, in a weird way, it's not even exactly about what the actual song is. It's like sort of where the song takes you or the headspace it puts you in.
Exactly, yeah. And I know that I can listen to a song like that and get that feeling. And when people message us to say that our music has given them that as well, I think, I know exactly what you're talking about. I get it. I totally get it. And I love that we can create that for other people.
Like going forward, I guess we were talking about, you did the Koven headline in London and you put out the Higher Ground EP, which I assume there's more to come there as well. Like what does the future look like, either near term or long term? Like, what are you working on? What are some goals? What are you excited about for the project?
I mean, long term, just want to keep going.
The best goal.
I just don't want it to end. Yeah, I just want it to keep going for as long as it possibly can. I know I said it earlier, but I just hope that we are an act that kind of has longevity and that we can keep going on the strength of our music. So we're just going to keep working, keep writing, keep playing shows. I think one of the things we would love to do in the future is do like a show with live orchestral elements, like actually at the show.
Yeah.
That's something we'd like to work towards. It's very expensive, so it's something that we'll have to kind of work towards. But adding more live elements into the shows as we go along would be something that we'd like to do.
And as far as like the rest of the year, next year goes, I assume, plenty of touring and all of that.
I'm just going to be busy. I'm just going to be, working. Max as well. It's always in the studio, working really hard. Just got to keep. Now we're at a point where we're happy. Just got to try and keep it going.
Do you like being busy? Do you like, being kind of go that way?
I do. Like, I'm really, really grateful for it. And I have moments where I absolutely love it, but I am finding some moments harder than I expected because I'm not very good at sleeping at like random times. Like, I'm not a very good napper.
You're right.
So if I miss like a night's sleep, I struggle to kind of just get like a midday nap. And I played a weekend in Canada a few weekends ago, and I was playing a headline show in Toronto on the Friday, and then I played Shambhala Festival.
Oh yeah,
like
amazing
the next
festival,
day.
Yeah.
And that was like, there was like 8 hours of travel just between those two. So I traveled like 10 hours to Toronto, played the show, stayed that night, had a couple of hours sleep, then had to travel 8 hours to Shambhala, camped at the festival, so didn't really get much sleep because it was really loud. And I think across a 3-day period, I got like 5 hours sleep. And by the time I was in the airport coming home, I was hallucinating. I was so tired. I did not know what was going on. And when you do things like that by yourself as well, because like traveling's a bit stressful anyway, you're always like, am I at the right gate? Am I at the right airport?
Yeah.
Am I even in the right town? I don't know what's going on. The amount of times I had to go up to someone and say, am I in the right place? This is my flight. Am I in the right place? And they were like, yeah, you're definitely here. And I was like, I don't know where I am. I don't think I'm in the right place. Because I was just so exhausted.
Right.
So that side of it is like, that's a bit tough. But then you come home and, I don't have to go to work on a Monday like I used to, so it's fine. Just come home and sleep for a day.
There's always something to be thankful for, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this has been really great. I really enjoyed talking with you. Before I wrap it up, is there anything else we didn't talk about? Anything else that's on your mind? Anything else you want to get out there?
No, I think we covered everything.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. Well, I usually end this just by asking one final question. I ask the same question at the end of each one of these interviews, just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. Could be from any time when you were a kid, yesterday, anytime. When in that moment, in that memory, music really had a deep impact on you, really kind of hit you hard or meant something to you in that moment. And that's meant to be a really broad question. There's no wrong answer.
I think this is quite deep,
but
going through a very, very big breakup, it's such an important time to turn to music when you go through something like that. And it's the escapism of it, isn't it? I think with music is such an escapism for people. Like we spoke earlier about just Friday night, Saturday night, escapism on a dance floor. But actually, sometimes in your real life, in the real toughest parts, you just need to listen to the music. And it just kind of takes the stress, the edge off, the stress off, just kind of the release that you can get with it is so important. So I'd say, going through something tough like that, which I did a few years ago, music was just everything to me then.
Do you have a memory of something you were listening to at that time?
I can't remember what it was, but I put something on in my car and I cried, but not like, it wasn't like a sad cry. It was like a happy cry.
Right.
Because I was feeling like I was getting through it, but I can't remember what it was. I actually think it might be something by Ibiza.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I mean, it's, and again,
I just turned to them. Or it might have been a Coldplay track.
Okay.
I do listen to a lot of Coldplay as well.
Yeah. No, well, both of those are good for that kind of vibe. And yes. I think it connects again, like it's, what we were saying earlier, sometimes it's not even necessarily about exactly what the song is. It's about the place it takes you, or how it allows you to connect, right? Like earlier you were saying like, oh, this sounds so dramatic, but I think sometimes that's exactly what music is for, is, really accepting that like, this is a dramatic moment in my life, and the way I'm feeling about it, like this kind of justifies it, right? Like this actually makes it real.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was really fun.
No problem. Thank you very much for having us on.
Absolutely.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.